Triple Flix. Lock me up, lock me up.
Woo! ChaddyBobby1130. And we are here for my top 5 countdown for the Triple Flix Mafia channel. This is our top 5 VHS rentals when we were younger. This is a really cool list to make. It's a very random one because the stipulation is it's movies that we couldn't have owned. We could have only rented, which is fine because I rented a lot of movies as a kid, mainly when I was at my grandparents'. So the majority of these from this list are going to be movies that I watched, you know, because I would go stay at both sets of grandparents every other weekend. I'd stay with my mom's parents one weekend, and I stay with my dad's parents one weekend. Most of the time, like usually on Friday nights, that was when I was to go stay. But yeah, man, this is a fun list to make. If you haven't subscribed to the Triple Flix Mafia channel, be sure to do that in the description box. You know what I'm saying? Well, you're already here, so just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications. And yeah, without further ado, man, my number 5. NBA Super Slams 2. That's right. That's the thing. I'm upset. I was obsessed with basketball, football, baseball. I didn't play with toys after I was like 5 years old, up until after like 5 or 6. I collected cards and I religiously watched sports and played sports games. And there was, you know, I loved highlight tapes, you know, and this was back way, you know, before the internet and stuff. So that's the only way you could watch it. Like the Ken Burns had the baseball, you know, bloopers, and I loved blooper videos. But this one was one that I rented all the time. It was an NBA, it was just a dunk highlight tape of all the cool dunks from NBA players. Sean Kemp was my favorite player when I was younger because he's such an awesome like dunker. So I constantly rented this one. This one I didn't rent at my grandparents' house. I would rent this at the video store closest to my house. We had a video store called Video Time, and I would go and rent this one once a week usually, and go home and watch it because you could get it for 2 or 3 days or whatever it was. But very random release. But I mean, it was one I watched all the time, man. I used to love watching the dunk tape. So that was my number 5. My number 4. Little Big League. Oh, I love this movie, man. And I never owned this one. I always rented this one a lot. At my dad's parents' house, they had a huge VHS library, and it was all stuff that they had recorded off of the movie channels. But they didn't have this movie. And I don't know when this came out, mid-90s, so I was probably 10 or 12 or whenever it came out. But I just loved it. You know, of course, it's the movie about the kid that becomes manager of the Minnesota Twins. And it's just a fun baseball movie, man. You know, Rookie of the Year I owned. Angels in the Outfield I owned. Little Big League I didn't. I think maybe like years later, maybe. But I still don't think that I owned that one. Because it's never had a DVD release, or I've never owned it on DVD. I think it's got one, but I've never owned it. But it was just, I always loved that one, man. I used to rent that at my grandparents' house. So my number 4 was Little Big League. My number 3, good old Funny Farm. I love old Chevy Chase movies were where it's at. Chevy Chase, I don't know what happened to him, if he caught some kind of illness to where he couldn't be funny anymore. But after this one and Christmas Vacation, it's like he was just not funny anymore. But this movie's hilarious. You know, I've watched it on Blu-ray multiple times since I've had it. But as a kid, this is what I always rented, because there was 3 different video stores. This is the one that I also rented at the video store closest to my house. It was like walking distance from my house. It was probably like less than a half mile away from my house, so we could just walk there. Me and my brother, or me and my buddy would go, and I used to always look at the horror movies, but I never rented any horror movies because I was too scared to rent them. I was too scared to watch horror movies when I was younger. But Funny Farm was one that I watched all the time. I remember seeing it on TV one time, and I just thought it was really funny. So I always would look for it at the video store, and it was one that got rented a lot. And it's just so funny, man. You know, Chevy chasing his wife by this house, and it's just one thing after another, you know, and it's really funny though. I've always enjoyed that movie. So that's my number 3. My number 2. Weekend at Bernie's. Another one that this was the one that I would rent at my mother's parents. Okay, so there was a video store close to their house called Video Checkout, which turned into Movie Gallery. So these next 2 that I'm going to be talking about, I would rent when I would go over there. Like every Friday night we would go, or every other Friday night we would go over there. We would usually get pizza, and then we would go right next to the Little Caesars Pizza was the Video Checkout. We would go in there and rent movies. My brother most of the time would rent video games. I would rent movies. And Weekend at Bernie's, the cover just looked funny to me. And this was probably when I was about 10 or 12, around the same time frame, early to mid 90s, whenever it came out. And I probably shouldn't have been watching it at that age, because I mean, Weekend at Bernie's isn't like a family friendly movie, but by God, I watched it. And I just thought it was so funny. But even my papa, rest in peace, he watched it with me a lot, and he thought it was hilarious that Bernie was dead and acting like, you know, they were acting like he was alive. And there's the whole scene where they're on the speedboat and Bernie falls off the speedboat and he starts hitting those markers and they make that ding, like that, the ding noise. My papa thought that's the funniest thing of all time. He just would he would laugh like hysterically at that stuff. So that was always fun. Watching that with him, you know, and he passed away in January this year. So, you know, that's a memory that I have of me and him, one of the many. But Weekend at Bernie's was a great one that we always rented. And my number 1, it is what it is. I could probably tell you I rented this movie 40, 50 times probably. Royal Rumble 1990. Everybody knows how much of a fan of wrestling I am. I don't watch the current product anymore, but the old product, I'm all about it. It's just the greatest thing ever to me. That time frame from 89 to 92 is by far the best time in wrestling to me. And my papa, same guy I was just talking about before with Weekend at Bernie's, he loved wrestling too, but he liked the WCW wrestling because it would come on TBS and he'd watch it Saturday nights. He was a huge fan of Ric Flair. He was a huge fan of Dusty Rhodes. But whenever I would go to the Video Checkout, we would they'd have a wrestling section. Well, we never did get the pay-per-views because they just cost way too much money. And nobody in my family really liked wrestling. You know, my dad and my mom didn't like it. My sister liked it some. Me and her, she watched it with me. My brother never really was into it. But they had the wrestling section. And when I found that, I was like, and I saw Hulk Hogan and was the greatest thing. I mean, he was my hero as a kid. And I remember Royal Rumble 1990. Royal Rumble has always been my favorite pay-per-view because, you know, every minute or two they bring in another guy and he comes in, and everybody knows Royal Rumble. And this is the one, Hulk Hogan, he won Royal Rumble 1990 and 91. And this Royal Rumble 90 to me was just the greatest, man. And I rented this one, between this one and SummerSlam 1990, I rented these two wrestling pay-per-views, I'm serious, like 40 times, like over a span of 2 or 3 years. I could never get tired of them, and I would watch them. And Video Checkout had a cool deal where you could keep them for 5 days. So I would watch them at my nanny and papa's, and then when I'd come home, I'd bring them with me and watch them at my house, because I had a VCR player in my room when I was growing up, and I would watch it there and then give it to my mom or dad to return back to the store. But I mean, it's my number one. It's got to be, because it brings back so many memories as a kid watching wrestling, and that's the one that sticks out the most, because I rented several of them. I mean, I rented WrestleMania 6, I rented WrestleMania, anything from that time frame, I would watch, I would rent. And that's just the one that sticks out the most, because that's one of my favorites. Royal Rumble 92 is my favorite, one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time. But they didn't have that one, so I never got to rent that one. I didn't see that one until later on. But yeah, that's my top 5, man. Number 5, NBA Super Slams 2. Number 4, Little Big League. Number 3, Funny Farm. Number 2, Weekend at Bernie's. And number 1, Royal Rumble 1990. Very random list, but that's what this is about, man. You know what I mean? Brings back great memories. This was a good idea. Y'all be sure to comment in the description, in the comment section on your top 5, or you don't have to do a top 5 if you don't want to. Just some stuff that you used to rent growing up. So, and be sure to like, comment, subscribe. We've got more content coming out for you this week. Got a couple of cool videos coming out the next week or so. So just stay tuned for that. Hit that bell for notifications. I'm ChaddyBobby1130. Peace.